In 17th century Europe, bathing wasn't just unpopular, it was considered downright dangerous. Not because the water was dirty, not because of slipping hazards, but because people genuinely believed that warm water opened the pores, and that open pores were gateways for disease, bad air, and even evil spirits. To them, taking a bath wasn't cleansing your body. It was opening your defenses and letting sickness walk right in. A monastery record from Saint Laurent in 1610 includes this line: "A man who bathes often invites the foul humors to dine within his flesh." Instead of bathing, people wiped themselves down with dry cloths. They doused themselves in strong perfumes. And many wore a pomander, a small, fragrant orb filled with herbs and spices, believed to protect them from illness and bad smells. Royalty avoided bathing entirely. According to palace records, King Louis XIV is said to have bathed only twice in his entire life. Today, most of us wouldn't dream of skipping a shower for even 2 days. We scrub, exfoliate, moisturize, and spray ourselves until we smell like vanilla forests and summer rain. We treat not showering as a red flag, a sign of burnout or breakdown. But back then, not bathing meant you were being cautious, clean, maybe even smarter than your neighbor. So if there's a day you're feeling too lazy to shower, just remember this: you're still a lot cleaner than a 17th century French noble. In the modern world, brushing your teeth twice a day is one of the first habits we learn as children. But not too long ago, people believed that brushing your teeth too often could actually make them fall out. Yes, brushing was seen not as protection, but as erosion. In several parts of Europe during the 17th and 18th centuries, the dominant belief was that the more you scrubbed your teeth, the weaker they became, much like rubbing a rock until it turns to dust. To them, brushing wore down the enamel, shook loose the roots, and made the teeth vulnerable to cold air and bad spirits. One physician in London, writing in 1709, warned, "Frequent scouring of the teeth with bristles doth more damage to the bone than a year of neglect." So instead of brushing, people relied on gentler methods, like rinsing with wine, chewing mint leaves, or rubbing the teeth lightly with linen dipped in vinegar or honey. To freshen breath, a small pouch of cloves or cinnamon bark might be kept in the mouth, not unlike chewing gum. But medieval, even in aristocratic circles, a pearly white smile wasn't the goal. In fact, teeth too clean were sometimes considered suspicious, as if you were hiding something, or trying too hard to look young. Compare that to today, where we spend billions on whitening strips, sonic brushes, and laser treatments to make our teeth look like polished marble. So yes, we now understand dental hygiene far better. But if you ever forget to brush your teeth at night and feel a little guilty, just remember, in the 1700s, that might have been considered a wise health decision. They say nothing beats 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep. But what if we told you that, for hundreds of years, the healthiest kind of sleep was broken in half? In medieval Europe, people didn't sleep straight through the night. Instead, they practiced what was known as segmented sleep, a pattern where the night was divided into 2 distinct parts: first sleep and second sleep. Here's how it worked. People would go to bed shortly after sunset, often around 8 or 9 p.m. That was first sleep. Then, sometime around midnight or 1 a.m., they'd wake up, not by accident, on purpose. They would stay awake for an hour or two, engaging in all sorts of activities. Some prayed, some wrote letters, some visited neighbors, and yes, some couples saw this as an ideal time for intimacy. It was quiet, private, and, apparently, spiritually charged. Then came second sleep. People would go back to bed and sleep until dawn. This wasn't unusual. It wasn't even questioned. It was simply how sleep worked. This segmented rhythm was mentioned in medical texts, religious writings, and even court documents. One 16th century physician wrote that the time between the 2 sleeps was the most natural hour to conceive ideas or children. What changed? the invention of artificial light. With street lamps, candles, and later electricity, people started staying up later and sleeping through the night became the norm. Today, if you wake up at 2 a.m., you Google, "Why am I broken?" But 500 years ago, you just grab a snack, say a prayer, or write in your dream journal. So next time you find yourself awake in the middle of the night, don't panic. You might just be tapping into an ancient, and possibly healthier, sleep cycle that your ancestors swore by. Today, when you feel a fever coming on, your first instinct might be Tylenol, rest, or maybe herbal tea. But a few centuries ago, in parts of Europe, the cure wasn't tea, it was hot milk and wine. Yes, people once believed that heating up milk and mixing it with red wine could bring down a fever. The combination wasn't just a home remedy, it was often prescribed by physicians, monks, and traveling healers. And the reasoning behind it? Surprisingly logical, by the standards of the time. According to humoral theory, which dominated Western medicine for centuries, illness was caused by an imbalance in the body's four fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. A fever, they believed, came from an excess of heat and dryness. So what better way to fight that than with something warm, wet, and rich? Wine was thought to carry medicinal properties, and milk symbolized nourishment and balance. Together, they made the perfect alchemical cocktail, calming, rehydrating, and, in theory, spiritually grounding. In some monastic texts, it was even called the White Blessing. The drink was often served at night, under candlelight, in ceramic cups. It might have tasted strange, but to the people of the time, that was part of the charm, and perhaps part of the magic. Today, we might look at this and think, that sounds like a recipe for stomach trouble, not healing. But hundreds of years ago, it was just common sense. And who knows, maybe they slept better afterward. So the next time you're fighting off a fever and feeling desperate, just remember, your ancestors raised a warm, boozy glass and toasted to their health. Today, root vegetables are celebrated for being humble, hearty, and healthy. But a few hundred years ago, eating too many carrots or turnips might have been considered emotionally dangerous. In certain parts of 17th century Europe, philosophers and physicians believed that root vegetables absorbed not just nutrients from the soil, but emotions. Specifically, sadness. They called it earthly melancholy. The logic? These vegetables grew underground, in the dark, surrounded by cold, heavy earth. It was thought that this environment infused them with a somber energy, one that, when eaten, would slowly weigh down the spirit. Some texts warned that excessive consumption of turnips could lead to a heaviness in the chest and a downward gaze of the eyes. Carrots were said to cloud judgment. Even beets, now a superfood, were once described as useful to the blood, but troubling to the mind. This wasn't superstition, it was science. According to humoral theory, melancholy was one of the 4 bodily humors, and certain foods were believed to increase it. Root vegetables, with their damp, dense nature, were prime suspects. To balance this, people were advised to eat sun fruits, foods that grew upward toward the light. Grapes, pears, even leafy greens were thought to encourage joy and clarity of thought. Today, we laugh at the idea that a beet could ruin your mood. But then again, have you ever tried eating a cold boiled parsnip alone in a dim kitchen at 11 p.m.? It's not exactly uplifting. So maybe, just maybe, they were onto something.